Okay, so hi, thank you for being here. Happy Thursday. To get started, there's a few housekeeping things I want to tell you about. Number one is if I have information to share with you, how do you get that? Two of the ways that I do that, if you have a question about something, I prefer that you directly email me. But emailing through Canvas also works. I'll still get all of those. But if I want to communicate something to you, like the whole class, I'll use Canvas announcements. Or if you submit something and I need to tell you something about that, I'll use submission comments on like the assignment. So I want to make sure that you're set up to get those emails so that you get that information when I have it. So if you want to go to Canvas and pull that up, there's a way to set your email notifications. So if you're on the main page of Canvas and then you go to your account, did you get one of those last time? It's the same thing as last time.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so if you go to your account, there's a notifications part. And then here's a page just with all of these different things that you might want to get notified about. So we've got like due dates or grading policy, like things being updated throughout the course. The two things I really care about, one is announcement. And so if you click on like the bell that I have, it says either notify immediately or send me a daily summary. Sometimes I send out announcements that are time sensitive, so I would probably recommend the first, but that's up to you. Either the first or second are good. Daily summary usually sends around like 5 o'clock. So one of them is announcement, make sure that's set. And the other is submission comment. So that's so for example, for Lab 0, you all have hopefully submitted Lab 0 by now. And I have gone through and added a comment on all of those. And to make sure that you get an email of that so that you don't miss it, or I have it set to email me immediately so that if you comment on the assignment, I will also see it. So make sure that submission comment is again one of the first two options. All right, I'll give you a minute to make sure you've got that set.
Yeah, what's that?
The notification settings. So did you go on Canvas?
I am on Canvas right now.
Okay, so if you go to your account, there's like a. Click on account, and click on notifications. And then there's two categories, one of which is announcements. So if you scroll down, a little bit up, announcements. That's good. And then the other is submission comments down here. And so I think it's one of those. So daily summary, that's fine, or notify immediately. All right, we good? Anybody have questions on that? Awesome. That's mostly how I will contact you if I need clarification from you as well. The other thing I want to tell you is that I record the lectures, so I'm recording it right now. I don't record the attendance part because privacy concerns, but the actual lecture component I do record, and I post them on YouTube, and I put the links in Canvas so that you can always access them. So after class, if you're like, man, I didn't follow along really well, I want to go back and rewatch that and figure out how to do this, then it's available for you. So the first class is also already on there. Let me show you how to get there. So if we're on the main Canvas page, we go to our course. Also, side note, did you know that you can like, if you've got a bunch of courses up here that you don't want anymore, you can also change those. So if you go to like courses and then all courses, like I've got 2 of them from last semester that I don't want up here anymore. And so you can just put a star by the ones that you do want there. And then those are the only ones that show up. I'm all about giving you tips to make your life easier. You can also name them, like nickname them. Wait, I didn't show you how to do that. So like programming 2, if you click the 3 little dots, I had classes that are all like CS222, CS374, and that's not clear to my brain. So if I give them nicknames, then helps me remember. Okay, but in terms of lecture links, on the main page, the modules, which is also the home page, there's a module of important information. The first one is here's where we meet, and here's my office hours and where it is, and also the appointment booking page. So that way that's there. You don't have to go hunting for it in the syllabus. The other page that is up here is lecture links, where right now, since we've only had one class, there's only one video, but you can click on it and then that takes you, here's the class. And so you can play it back and yeah, use that however you need to. As we go, because this is a coding heavy class and we'll do a lot of coding in class. Once you submit active learning, the next day I'll usually go in and post, here's the code that I wrote in class. So if in case you need to refer to that, you can always download that version as well. And so those will again go in the space for that day. So I'm all about giving you the tools that you need to succeed. My other thing is if you forget your packet or you don't bring it, first of all, try to do it. Don't lose it because you'll turn it in at the end of the unit. If you do happen to forget the packet, it should be on Canvas. So in the unit module, I've got it right here, just the docx version. So you can always pull that up and either type in it, or if you've got a separate sheet of paper, write on that and then just like stick it in with that when you go to turn it in. That's fine with me. All right, any questions before we get started? All right, let's do it. We are in Unit 1. New slideshow. Make sure I'm sharing the thing on Zoom. I am. Great. Good to go. All right, so here's what we did last time. You downloaded Java, hopefully. Does anybody not have Java downloaded yet? Great. The next thing you did, you downloaded Eclipse. I know there's at least one person who wasn't able to do it. Were you able to fix it? Or you were able to fix it?
I'm sorry.
Okay, great. That's fine too. If you don't, if you're using VS Code, I will give you like a short version of this. So let's say you install VS Code if Eclipse is doing wonky things. The way that you'll do this is, so VS Code has, how do I want to do this? VS Code's rules for Java things are a lot more relaxed. Like I could just have a .java file that I open in VS Code and run it without any of the other project structure that Eclipse enforces. So that's just something to keep in mind, that when I have you using Eclipse, I have you do things in the projects, like the project setups that VS Code just doesn't really care about. If you are using VS Code and you want to make a new project, on Mac, I do Command-Shift-P. On Windows, I would do Control-Shift-P. And that brings up this little dialog box of things we can choose. And then if I type create Java, it'll show up as something like create Java project. So if I do that, then it'll give me an option for build tools, and no build tools is fine. And then something comes up where it asks me, where do you want to put this? I'll add an aside, if you don't have VS Code installed, you can kind of ignore this but for now. But I think it's also useful if you do have it, then there's different ways to get to the same place. So I'm going to store this in 222, and I'm going to name it sample Java project. That's where I'm going to put it. And then it shows up here of tell me what to call it. Sample Java project name. That's just what I'm calling it. Press enter. And then it shows up here of this is now my project. And so if we look at Eclipse, which I don't think I've opened yet, we have a project structure over here on the left. So it includes a README, and if you open the SRC folder, which is sourced, it gives you just like a hello world program. That's cool. It'll give you the same kind of project structure as Eclipse, roughly. So I'll launch my Eclipse workspace. And so if I go to the project that I did before, the only difference is I have Hello World in a package, and it doesn't have that in VS Code. It doesn't do that automatically. A package is basically just a folder. And so if you're over here in VS Code, you want to like add a folder, there's a little button that says new folder. And you can say basics. And then if I want to make a file in that, there's a little new file icon up here where I can say hello.java. And if I type that and hit enter, then it comes up with public class hello. So VS Code and Eclipse at their core are both text editors. Like they show you here's the folder structure and they give you a place to type stuff. It's just different ways of going about doing the same thing. There are also IDEs other than VS Code and Eclipse. Now that I'm trying to think of them, I forget all of them. Does anybody know what they are? No? Okay. I think NetBeans maybe one. There's others. So like you're not, if you go somewhere and they're using something else other than Eclipse to work in Java, like that's fine. There's other ways of writing this code. Okay, I just wanted to go over that because you have options and we can talk about them if you want. If something goes wrong with Eclipse and you need to go to VS Code, we can do that. Okay, we talked about Eclipse Workspace, which is where your stuff is stored, which should be one of the answers to the packet problem. We talked about the Eclipse Workspace. That's where all of your Java code goes. And so if you go ahead and open up Eclipse, then we've got our Package Explorer on the left-hand side, usually. We've got the console on the bottom, usually. And if that's not there, then it's Window, Show View, and then Console. That's how we get there. And that's where all our program output goes. And then in the middle, we've got our editor. That's where we type stuff. And then on the right-hand side, there's stuff that you can ignore if you want or use if you want, up to you. Talk briefly about perspectives. And then this is kind of where we ended, where we started to create a project. So hopefully now you have a project, something like CS222 in class. We went through the project, how to create it. Does anybody need me to go over this again in detail? If you have issues, I'm happy to, if you want to come after class, I'm happy to walk you through it as well. Basically, we named the project and then it shows up in our package explorer. And then once we have the project, we create a class where we give it a package where this is where we're putting it. This is the folder that it lives in. We give it a name. So capital H, hello world, capital H matters. Then stuff that we're going to ignore for now, but we're going to learn later on. And then check the box for public static void main. If you didn't check that box, then you would get to something that looks kind of like this, right? It's just public class hello where there's nothing in it. That's okay. In VS Code, they have some really robust snippets where if you start typing something, it'll autofill. That's one of the reasons that I really like VS Code. That's something that I wish Eclipse had more of. Sadly, I haven't figured it out yet. But if I type main and then I hit enter, it gives me the magic words that I need to run the thing. So if you didn't do that, then you can just type public static void main parentheses string brackets args. So you can always type this manually if you didn't check that box. Okay. So I think this might be a packet problem. Yeah, so this is packet problem number 5 of just telling you like just like replicate this where we've got our project name, we've got our source folder, we've got our package, then we've got our actual file. I'll show you what I'm kind of looking for as well. So if I was drawing this, I would say like DS222 in class, that's the project name, right? And then in there is a source folder. Then in there is hello world.java. And so that's just an opportunity for you to write out, here's kind of what we're doing. Here's that folder structure. Because this is how Java projects are structured in general. Okay. So that should be fairly straightforward. So we kind of sped through this last time. But in order to actually say hello, we type system.out.println, open parentheses, double quotation, hello world, double quotation, close parentheses, semicolon. It's a lot of things. I'm aware. I will say that the capital S of system matters. I will say that the double quotes instead of the single quotes matters. I will also say that the semicolon matters. So we'll talk as we go through this unit and further units, we'll talk about why that is. But to get started, I have to say like, do this. And then as we go, we'll learn why once we're able to do things. Okay, so once you type that, so I've typed system.out.println, that curly thing, that's an L. Hello world. And then once we do that, so let's see. So right now my file is saved. How do I know that? If you look at the little tab that this file is associated with, I have two hello worlds. Let's close one of them. So this file is saved because there's no asterisk in the file name. So if I were to make some changes here, I just added spaces, doesn't care about spaces. There's a little asterisk next to the file name. That says the file's not saved. Man, that went. Sometimes I get students who come to me saying, it's not doing, I fixed it in the code, but it's not doing something. So the strategy there is make sure that the file is saved and then make sure that that file is what you're rerunning. And so to save the file, you can, let's see, there's some icons at the top left here. There's save and save all. Save saves just this file that you're looking at. Save all saves all the files that are currently open. You can also go to file, save, or save all. Those are options. Something that I haven't seen students know about is you can also do like a keyboard shortcut to save things, where for Mac, I do Command S, and that saves it. For Windows, you would do Control S typically, unless you're like on a really weird system. That's like standardized. So if I'm typing things, then I just do Command S, then I save the file. The other thing about Eclipse is if you're typing something and then you save it, it does what it called compiles. So like I can type things and then when I save it, it'll say, hey, there's something wrong with the gibberish you just typed. It doesn't mean anything in Java. So sometimes if you're making changes to fix something, then you save it, then it'll correct itself. So see, like right now, the little icon still says there's an error, but if I save it, then it goes away. Okay, so that's how to save things. And then to run something, yeah, question.
There's like a little clipboard thing to the left of the number of lines. What is that?
Ooh, yeah, this is, wait, hold on, let's hover over it. If I hover over it, it's really small. This is also why I don't like Eclipse. It says to do auto-generated method stub. So Eclipse lets, and that's because of this comment. So when I created the main method, when I clicked the checkbox, this comment shows up. I didn't write it. Eclipse made it for me. But it's like a special comment because it says to do in capital letters. And so this is a way of telling the programmer, hey, I've made this method for you. You should probably do something here. And so let's see if it shows up. I don't know if it will. I don't think it shows up in the task list. Synchronize? No. I thought maybe it would show up in like the task list, but I guess not. Yeah, if we want, so this doesn't mean there's an error at all. It just is Eclipse's way of saying, hey, you have a to-do thing. So maybe if I had a to-do later, then it shows up in the left column as well. Like, here's another to-do thing. Does that answer your question? Cool. Any other questions? Great. Okay, yeah, so keep getting sidetracked. In order to actually run it, there's a green play button over here. There's a sequence of like 3 in a row. You can hover over them to see what they are. The one from the right says run last tool. The middle one says coverage. And the one on the left says run hello world. That's the one we care about. The other are probably for like building things or doing debug stuff.
Excuse me.
Yes, question. Sure. So if you click the play button, if you've got this right there, then it'll show up in the console. So if it doesn't show up in the console, go ahead and find that tab. What's up? That's where we are. So you can run it with the green play button. Great. Yeah.
What about all the other stuff? There.
These are just comments. You don't need those. Okay, is everybody able to run it? Oh, right. I should also mention VS Code. If you're in VS Code, so in VS Code, it says it's not saved by there's like the little circle there. If I save it, then the little circle goes away. And then there's a play button on the right-hand side where I can do that. And then it prints hello world. Awesome. Great. So yeah, so the console, I'll call it console. I'll also probably call it the terminal. It's interchangeable things. That just means here's where the output goes. Okay, so for the rest of the unit, I think we'll keep writing in the hello world.java or whatever you've decided to call it. And then at the end of today, however far we get, you'll turn that in for active learning. Okay, so we're going to look at what sort of stuff we can do here. Just basics. So I'm going to assume that you have some knowledge of Python. If you don't have knowledge of Python, then come talk to me, because a lot of the things I say are like, you did this in Python. Let's do this in Java. So does everybody remember functions? Did you talk about functions in Python? So functions where you have like def for main, you'll have like def main parentheses colon. Yeah. Yeah. So it is simpler than Java, but this is one of the things, this is why we learn Java, because Python does things that are simpler, but Java gives a lot of skills that also other languages use. So we have to learn how those languages talk. So what we called functions in Python, we call methods in Java. So functions, methods, they mean the same thing, but just in Java, we call it methods for reasons we will get to. In order to make the code run, we need a main method. And so the main method has to be spelled like this: public static void main string args. Like all of these components we need. It's a special method. The code is only going to run if we have the method, what we call the signature. So this is the signature. This says, here's what kind of method it is. Here's, we'll talk about what all these parts mean, but like all those parts are really important for us to be able to run the code. Yeah, so if we didn't have it, let's, I'm going to comment these out. So if we didn't have it, it gives me an error. But like if we didn't have a main method and we try to run it and nothing happens because we don't have a main. Okay, so one of the packet problems, I think this is number 6, where it's fill in the blanks, and then maybe work with a neighbor to try and play around with the code that we've typed. So we've typed this. Try removing one of these words and see if it still runs. Does it give you an error? Or try misspelling. Does that matter? Yeah, that's a good point. Here, I'll mention that for everybody. Some of you may have, like, let's say I make some changes here, and then I haven't saved the file, and then I click run. And then this is just telling me, hey, you didn't save it. Do you want to save it before we do something with it? So you can click that if you want, if you always want to save it before launching. I don't have it. I don't know why. But you can choose to click that if you want, and then just click OK, and that will save the file and then run it. Okay, sorry, continue. So what do you figure out? Does capitalization matter?
Yes.
Yeah. So if I try public, then it says no. What is this? Static also matters. If I capitalize the C in public, then that's also a problem. If I give it a capital letter, that doesn't work. So main has to be spelled literally lowercase M-A-I-N for us to do something. Does spelling matter as well? Yeah. So these are special words in Java. The combination of these special words makes something happen. Okay, if we delete one of these words, is it still going to run? No. Okay, so pretty sure that that's not going to make it run. Yep. So it has to be static. Does it have to be public? Yes. And then if we take out void and we run that, that also doesn't work. So for this example, we'll look into cases where that's not always true, where maybe we don't need to have public for something, maybe we don't need to have static for something. But to make the code actually run, we need all these words. Anything else you've figured out that was cool during this? Nope. That's okay. Fairly straightforward. All right. So we printed something. So we wrote system.out.println, and that prints something to the console. You may remember in Python, we could just say lowercase print parentheses, and then we can either say like hello with just single quotes or hello with double quotes. We'll get to the quotes in a bit, but first we'll just start with looking at like what this means. These two, system.out.println and just print, those are for Python, those two are equivalent. They do the same things. Do you remember ever specifying like the end of a string in Python? No? Okay, so in Python, I'll tell you something new about Python today then. So in Python, if you print, let's say I'll print hello, what that secretly does is that prints hello plus a new line character. Because you may have noticed if you print like hello, and then if you say print hi, right? If you have two print statements, one after the other, they appear on different lines, right? They don't show up right next to each other. So what print is doing in Python is secretly adding a new line. So the next thing you print shows up on the next line. And new line is a special character that basically functions as like the enter key. And so that's what this is doing too. So the ln is like line new, I guess, where it's saying, I'm going to print this, and then the thing next that I'm going to print is going to be on a new line. I can say that, but do you want to believe me? Let's try it out. I'll talk about what I just did in a second too. So if I print something and then I print something else, we expect them to go on two different lines. So that shows up as hello world, and then on a different line, hi. So we've added this new line character. And the character is invisible, so we don't necessarily see it. But if we ever want to like manually type it, it's, oh gosh, I can never remember like the name of the different slashes. I think this is backslash. I think so. I think \n. So if I say hi, \n, what's up? And then I run that. Then hi and what's up show on different lines. So I've used the new line character. And so this ends up not being visible. If you ever wanted to actually type like \n and have it show up, the way you do that is you add another backslash to say like, yeah, no, really, I want this backslash to show up. It's called an escape character. So the backslash like sets you up for all these kind of characters. Like there's \T for tab. And that says hi and then what's up, like a tab away. So the backslash itself serves as an escape character. And so if we want to actually type it, then you just type it twice. Anyway, that's my tangent. So that means that println adds a new line after we're done printing this thing. So in Python, if we wanted to print, like say hello and hi, and we wanted to show it up as hello, hi, like all one word, the way we do that in Python is you specify the end of a string, like what happens at the end of the string. If you don't say anything, then it assumes to add a new line at the end of it. So like just saying print hello automatically does this. If you wanted to do anything else, you specify end. And so if we give it just an empty string, then it'll give us something like this. If we want to do that in Java, we can do that just with print. So system.out.print. So not println, we'll say hi. So we'll print hi. That doesn't add a new line. And then we'll print again, hello again on the same line. And so that gives us this, where it says hi, and then since we didn't have a new line character or anything after it, we said hello again on the same line. So there's different options depending on what you want to do. So print ln is different from just print. Does anybody remember using printf Java? I think in Python, I'm blanking now. Does anyone remember using like print and then having like an F string and you can say something. Yeah. So that's a formatted string where you can say like, you can have some bracket and then put your actual variable there, right? So you can do that also in Java. It just is spelled differently. Um, so what is that? System.out.printf. System.out.printf. Here are some numbers. And then what do I say? Um, I think it's %d for integers. Why is that not working? Let's try just one number. This also often happens in class where I think I've prepared as much as I can, and sometimes it just doesn't go right. Did you have a
Oh, I think, because like, I think the new lines, like, out of like, I think, yeah, it needs to be in the track.
Yeah. Okay, the lesson here. There's also brackets in Java. The brackets matter. So so in Python where you had like if you have everything in a method, everything's indented, right? Like you press the tab and it's like a level indented. Um, in Java, we do that with brackets. So these statements could all be on one line if we wanted them to. We don't want them to because we want to be able to read it and know what's going on. But we could have them all on one line if we wanted. And so the brackets say, here's where the main starts, here's where the main ends. Okay, so now I can give multiple numbers. So I can say 4, 5, 6. Hooray, pretty colors. That's what we want. And then it says here are some numbers which are on the same line. Why? It's on this same line as the previous one. Any guesses? So what I expected is maybe here are some numbers 4, 5, 6. I expected them like right here. Why did that not happen? Yeah, okay.
This is good, but right now,
Yeah, because the previous print statement, this guy is just print. So it didn't end with a new line. Yeah. Awesome. All that to say, so we'll mostly be using print ln just because that's the easiest. But I just wanted to mention that there are other options if you need them. Okay, and that's one of the packet problems of just like writing what are the different options that we used. I didn't put the print like the F string in the Python version, but I think you know what I mean, hopefully. All right. So one of the things that you may have noticed is that typing system.out.println is really tedious and annoying. You have options to make it better. For Eclipse, so for both VS Code and Eclipse, you can type, start typing sysout, SYSOUT. And then it's a little different, so I'll show you both ways. For Eclipse, you then type control space, even if you're on a Mac. So usually when you're on the Mac, people say like use command instead of control. But if you're on the Mac, you use control, like the control key. And then the space, like you hold control down and then type space. So let's so this is a comment in Java. It's a single line comment, just 2 forward slashes right after the other. And then that makes that anything on the line doesn't get counted. So we can write all the notes that we want there. Okay, so if I type SYSOUT and then I press, since I'm on a Mac, actually control and then space, then this thing pops up and it's like, oh, you want to do system.out.println. And then I press enter and there we go. Sometimes it'll just like autofill automatically, I've seen. So if yours does that, that's great. But if you have to like go through and press enter again, then it is what it is. If you're on VS Code, let me uncomment main. You can type sysout and then just press enter because it autofills that for you. So yeah, so both ways of getting to the same thing.
Professor.
Yes.
I need-
Okay. So in Java, it's system.out.println, or no, just, right, it is printf, and then that's just system.out.println. Any other questions? Cool. Okay, so that's how we stop from pulling our hair out at typing that thing over and over again. I think that's also the packet. Okay. So we've got 45 minutes left. Let's do some more stuff. In Python, when we're having variables, right, we can say like x equals 5. And we can say greet equals a string hello and number equals 6.4, right? We're defining our variables, we're giving them values. Sounds familiar. What we can do later if we so chose, we could say, okay, now x is going to be equal to 6.4. Now greet is going to be equal to 5. And now number is equal to hello. Like switch all the variable values up. That's allowed in Python. Java doesn't like that. What we're doing here is we're changing not only the values, but we're also changing the variable types without telling anyone. Like we're just saying x is an integer and now it's a floating point number, decimal number. Greet was initially a string and now it's an integer. Number is initially a floating point decimal number and now it's a string. Python, all fine. Java, no way. So in Java, we have to declare the type of the variables. We have to say, I'm going to have a piece of data. Here's what kind of data it is. And so the way that we declare something in Java is first we have to have the type name, and then we have to say the variable name. And so this says, I'm going to have an integer, I'm going to give it some space in memory, and I'm going to call it variable name. So let's declare something. That way. So if I'm declaring variables, let's say I'm going with the x is 5, greet is hello, and number is 6.4. To type that in Java, I say int x equals 5. I say int, or what was it? Greet equals hello. Greet. But I have to say what kind of thing greet is. Greet's a string. The way I spell that in Java is capital S string. The way I say that a number is 6.4, I have to say it's a floating point. It's a decimal point. We'll talk about what double means exactly. So if there's also a slight distinction between declaring and initializing. These are two important terms that I'll use a lot. Declaring is basically saying, here's what kind of thing it is. And that's a statement in and of itself, where I could say int x all by itself and not assign it anything. That's a valid statement, where I've now declared I have a variable x and I'm going to use it at some point, and that variable x is an integer. If I have this and I don't give it a value at all, you'll see a little yellow thing in the sidebar that says the value of the local variable x is not used. That's basically a ping of like, hey, you have a variable. You're going to use it? You're going to use it? So once you say like x equals 5, then I mean, unless you like sometimes, let's see, if we print x, then it goes away. So once we do something with it, then it's like, okay, you used it. I believe you. Right, so there's declaring and there's initializing. So declaring is saying, here's what kind of thing this variable is going to be. Initializing is, here's the initial value that I'm going to give it. So I'm going to say, okay, well, let's start x off at 5. Yeah, so a way of, if we have an integer I, we can declare them all in one go and then initialize them, assign some value to them afterwards. Or we can do it all in one line. Do I have that? Yes, I do. Yeah, so if you do it all in one line, the left-hand side, that's the declaring. The right-hand side with the equal sign, that's initializing. Yeah, let's type that. So if we have, no, actually we did it here. I think we're okay. The other thing is that if you type these correctly, then it'll turn pretty colors. If you misspell, like, if you forget the L in double, it'll turn some other color. But double is a special word, and so it'll turn a different pretty color. Okay. In terms of variable names, it's pretty much the same as it was for Python, which like encourage you to start with the lowercase letter. Everything after that, if you want to capitalize things, add number scores 0 through 9. all of those are fair game. It's just pretty please start with a lowercase letter. The reason for that is that typically file names, which we call classes in Java, which you'll see for ours specifically, our class, our file name starts with a capital letter. And so Java tries to keep those standards where classes, files start with capital letter, and then variable names stuff goes with the lowercase letter. So that's my pretty please. It won't necessarily be wrong. So if I said like into capital X and change that to capital X, it won't give me an error, but that's one of the standards. Okay. So you may have noticed so far that a lot of the things that I type, we end with a semicolon. That's standard for Java. All statements in Java have to end with a semicolon. And so you'll see it in like, it basically tells you what's a sentence in Java. We're doing something. So double number equals 6.4. That's a sentence saying I have a variable number. It's going to be a double and I'm giving it a value 6.4. Print is a statement in Java. It said, I'm printing this to the console, period. Or in our case, semicolon. Yeah, so any code statement that we're trying to do has got to end in a semicolon. That's something that Python doesn't have. Python, you can just like type something, hit enter, do another thing. But in Java, we could like, again, like I mentioned, we could have all of this on one line. And if we did that, oh, that gives me an error because I didn't fix the variable name. If we did that, it still runs. So like even if I put it all on one line, it still runs. But we'll go back, chase those back to lowercase. So yeah, so we can't have it all on one line if you want to, but we don't because we're humans and we like looking at code and being able to understand it. Okay, that should also be one. That's fairly simple. Okay, so when you start with Python, you typically work with a set of data types, where you work with like integers or decimal numbers or strings, right? The enclosed in quotations. Java also has those. Java also has what we call primitive types. Primitive types are like the basic data types that they're as simple as you go. So in Java, they are integers, which we can spell either bytes, short, int, or long. That's just like a regular number, like 4, 5, 10,000, 5 million. As long as it's an integer, we're cool with it. The difference between these options is just how much space are we going to allocate to this number. So if we only have a number that's like, I actually don't know. I think like, let's test it. Let's see if that works. Okay, so that works. I don't remember exactly the limit, but it's how depends on how big the number actually is. So we'll look at an example later on in the semester where we work with like some really big number that we get out of some calculation, and it ends up being too big for just an int. So we have to change it to long. So 255, let's check. Okay. Yeah, it gives us an error. We do 254. 7 and 128. Yeah, okay, so it's the limit's at 127. Um, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so if we want a number bigger than 127, we have to go up a level to short. And so the typical one that we use is typically int. And if you run into a big enough int, then you want to change it to a long. It's just precision. It's a matter of precision. And that also goes for float and double. So typically you'll, I don't know, you'll see either using float or double for a decimal point number. Yeah, I'll probably use double. The difference again is just precision. Boolean is a primitive value in Java. We spell it Boolean. In Python, it was called bool, B-O-O-L. We have to type it all out. So if we just type bool, it doesn't work. But if we type Boolean, then that works. In Python, Boolean value was spelled capital T true or capital F false. Here it's lowercase t true, lowercase f false. And then so Python doesn't really have this. So in Python, if you typed double quotes C or single quotes C, it's treated as the same thing. It's treated as a string. Java separates a string from a single character. So in Java, a single character, that's one of the primitive types, and that's just single quotes and then a single character. So let's see. So char for character. And if we type just single quotes, then we get there. If we try double quotes, then it gives us an error. And the error is type mismatch cannot convert from string to char. So string and char in Java are two different things. Okay. So I think hopefully you've been following along. A whole number is byte, short, int, or long. Decimal number is a float or a double. True, false is Boolean, which we spell lowercase t true, lowercase f false. Single character is called a char. More on chars and strings. A char single character is not the same. We have to spell it with single quotes. That's really important. If we spelled it with double quotes, that's a string. So like if we spelled this with double quotes, it doesn't like that. We spelled it with single quotes, but we added more letters. It doesn't like that because it's expecting a single character to go with that single quote. So like it only wants one letter there. To define a string, we have to say capital S string. And then we can say whatever we want inside. If we change those to single quotes, then it says invalid character constant. Basically, I don't know what you're doing. Also, it's not a single character. So what's going on here? So strings we spell with two quotes, the double quotes. Strings not in the table, like it's just char. That's because string is not a primitive type. It's something called a reference type. So in Java, there's a dichotomy, primitive types and reference types. Primitive is, as the name says, really, really simple. Reference is anything more complicated than that. So basically any variable type that's not a primitive. So string is a reference type. We'll talk more about that later. Okay, if we want to declare or initialize a reference variable, like a string, we do the same thing, except reference variables are called with a capital letter. And so that's why when we say string S, it starts with a capital S, because string is a reference type. Okay. 30 minutes left. You want like 2 minutes to get up and walk around? Yeah, let's do that. We've got time. I'll pause the recording. All right. So I figure we start loops. I know the STEM Center is coming in for the last 5 minutes to talk about things. So we'll get as far as we can, and then we'll just recap what we did. Next time, we will recap what we did today and then keep on going. Okay. I don't know why that showed up. What kind of loops are there? How did you do it in Python? For and while loops. Yeah, I have a spoiler here. Yeah, for and while loops. Those are the main kinds of loops, right? I have to fix the animation schedule. But yeah, so for loops where you could say for I in range 10, print I to print the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's it, right? We can do these in Java as well. They just look a little bit different. Yeah, so I'll give you the spoiler of here's what it looks like, and then we'll talk about the different parts of it. So this is what a for loop looks like in Java to do the same thing in Python. We'll talk about each of these steps. A while loop looks maybe more similar to how you would do it in Python, where we have some number outside of it, and then while some condition, then you print it and then add 1 to your counter variable, right? That look kind of familiar? Okay. So let's talk about the different parts of this, because it can be really confusing. So there's some basic steps of a loop. So that even Python does secretly, without us knowing it. Like it does it, and we can specify it if we want to, but usually we just don't. So the 3 basic steps are initialization, condition, and update. Initialization, so when we do a loop, we're typically counting something. We're counting how many times we're going to do this thing. And so initialization is where do we start counting? So in the beginning for this course, we'll typically start at 0. So we say that with int I equals 0, because that's how we've learned how to declare and initialize a variable. And so I is going to be the variable that keeps the count for us. That's the metronome. So initialization is just where do we start? The condition is how do we know when we're done? So I think, do I have, yeah. So you'll see in the condition here, this is I less than 10. Do you remember doing something like x less than 3 or x equals something in Python? Right, so that's the, that it's asking a question, like, is x less than 3? Is x equal to 10? Or is x greater than or equal to 4? Something like that. It's a question. And so that's our condition of have we reached the stopping point? So typically we've got the variable on the left-hand side and then our stopping point on the right-hand side. And when we've reached that stopping point, that condition will be true. If we haven't reached it yet, it will be false. Yeah, so that's the condition. So when do we know that when we're done? So the condition is So for the for loop, we start counting at 0. That's what this bit says for int I equals 0. And this is asking every time, is I less than 10? If we start at 0, is 0 less than 10? Yes. So we'll do the thing in the loop. The next time around, if I is equal to 1, and then we ask, is 1 less than 10? The answer is yes. So we keep doing the loop until we get to a point where I equals 10, and then we ask, is 10 less than 10? The answer is no. So we stop the loop. So the condition helps us to regulate when are we done here. And then since we've got a variable I that is keeping the count for us, that's our metronome, we need to know how to increase it every time. And so we'll typically start with just 1. And so, yeah, so like if we increase 1 every time, then we'll eventually get from 0 up till 9. Okay, we talked about condition. The update step. Do you remember any of this notation from Python? I think the first one is probably something that you would remember, right? Do you remember the plus plus from Python too, maybe? No? Okay, this is something that you can do in Python as well, I think. Yeah. I know for sure you can do this in Python, plus equals. These are all roughly equivalent, where it's all saying I'm adding 1 to the variable I, where we can say I equals I plus 1. On the right-hand side, that tells us, let's say I is 5. 5 is my favorite number. If I is 5, assignments in most programming language worked right to left. And so we start on the right-hand side with I plus 1. If I is 5, 5 plus 1 is 6. And what we do is we throw it over across the equal sign to I. And so now I is 6. So if we have 5 plus 1 equals I, this is I, then 5 plus 1, that gets thrown over here. And so now I is 6. That's how assignments work at a compiler level.
Yes, I haven't. I haven't typed anything on that print statement in my hello world. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I would recommend once I post the code that you open that and look through it and make sure everything in there makes sense to
Where
you.
do I find the code?
You will find the code on the lecture links page. I'll put it like right by today's video. It's not there yet because I haven't posted it yet because we're still working on it. But it will be there by tomorrow morning. Okay. Let's practice this a bit. So first of all, I want to make sure, like I've just told you that all of these are roughly equivalent. Don't take my word for it. So take a minute and try, maybe work with a neighbor and have a variable I equals 0, add 1, print it, and then play with some of these different ways of doing it and see whether it actually adds 1. Go for it. Here, I'll type something to get you started.
I can't see it from the board.
Equals 1 I or plus I. So yeah, so have the print statement and the int I equals 0 and play around with the different operations. There's one in particular that I think may not work. I want to know. And when you're done, if you get through all of them, just call it out that they're all the same or there's a difference. You finish it? Are they all the same? Anybody else find they're all the same? Yeah. Here's one that I'm curious about. Oh, what do you do? Where did you go? If I do plus plus I, this is one. Okay, it does. Um, wait, no, it's maybe not that one. I think maybe this one. Yeah, this is the fun one. So plus plus I gives us 1. I plus plus also gives us I. However, I'm willing to bet that if I instead print, like if I didn't do it here, but I did it inside the print statement, gives me 0. So this is a interesting quirk where the all of these are changing the value that's assigned to I. So it's adding 1 to the value in I. The plus plus things are a little bit special because they're doing that add 1 thing, but it does it in different orders. So the reason is I plus plus, it gives you I, and then it adds 1. And so what's happening here is we're printing the current state of I, which is 0, and then we're adding 1 after the print statement. So like if we did it, we said I here, and we did this again, it gives us 1. So it did indeed add 1. But it's just the order in which those operations happen. The plus plus I adds 1 and then gives you I. If that's confusing, it is. So don't really worry about it. Just know that all of these are adding 1 to I. How do we, let's say we wanted to, actually, we haven't practiced a for loop yet. So let's practice. So if I say for int I equals 0, let's just go less than 10, I plus plus. Something to note is that all of these things have to be inside of parentheses. That's required. Also, anything that we're going to do inside the for loop, so the thing that we're going to do repeatedly has to be in the curly brackets. This is giving me an error because I defined I up here. So I don't have to name it I in the for loop. I can name, it's just a variable. I can name it whatever I want. So if I name all these J, then I'll print J. There we go. So if I do this and then I run it, I get 0 through 9 as expected, right? What do you think I need to change if I wanted to go in the even numbers? So 0, 2, 4, and so on. So I'm adding 1 to J here. How do I change it by 2?
J plus equals 2.
Yeah. J plus equals 2. And so like this is equivalent to J equals J plus 2. J plus equals 2. These, the plus pluses don't work for that. Plus plus is solely reserved for just adding 1, but the other work fine. If we do plus equals 2 and we run that, then we get 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Great. Let's see, what are the other options? You can change that instead of 2, you could do 3. For if maybe we want to, I have to be a little bit careful about this. Let's say we want to go from the other direction. So like from 10 down to 0. So we would start at a different place, right? Because we're not starting from 0 anymore. We would want to start from 10. Maybe if I spell 10 correctly. And then what's our condition? What do you think? We want to go from 10 to 0 by 3s. Or let's just start with by 1s. 10 down to 0 by 1s. What's our condition? Greater than 0. Or maybe if we want to include 0, maybe we would add an equal sign there. And then what do you think our update step should be? Yeah. So these operations also work for minus. So you can have J equals J minus 1. Yeah, question?
Could you do it if you just kept dividing it by 2? I mean, it technically would never end, but like, if that worked.
All right. Okay, first let's check minus minus works, and then let's work like mad scientists. So yeah, so that lets us go 10, 9, 8 all the way down to 0. I think, nope, that divide is a comment. Yeah. So for not all of the arithmetic operations are supported like that. It's kind of trial and error. But if you want to assign a new value to J, then we just do that. Let's actually try, let's just try that, see what happens.
Always change the 0 for the 1. Because you can divide all you want and you're gonna.
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't even let me do this. So we need to assign a new value to J. So we need an equal sign in there somewhere. So J equals J divided by 2. I'm aware that this probably won't end. And there we go. It's not ending. If this ever happens to you, if you found yourself in an infinite loop, there's usually a red square that's lit up now. And so if I click terminate, that'll stop it. Let me check outside, see if Magali's here. Do not see her. Let's see, is there anything else that I want to try? Yeah, okay, so maybe this is. Hi, okay, hold on, I'm just gonna finish up. Okay, so we will maybe play with this more next time. I know there's also some things on the packet that you can fill out now. So we'll stop here with for loops and then we'll pick up here, do some more crazy experiments next time. Thank you for suggesting the divide by two. This is kind of what I want to do in class of if I show you something and then you're like, I wonder, could it happen? Let's mention it and then we'll figure it out together. Okay, for active learning today, please, it's the 6th. So turn in the hello world.java. I will show you how to do that right now. Okay, so if I am in Eclipse, I find my file in the Package Explorer. I right click it. And then I go down to Show In and then System Explorer. So right click the file in Package Explorer, go to Show In, and then select System Explorer. If I click that, then here's the file. I can drag and drop this into Canvas. If you don't figure it out today, we can talk after class. It's hard to get it first. But that's the active learning assignment for today. All right, I'm gonna stop recording and I'll hand it over to, actually, no, I'm gonna stop recording and then I'll hand it over to Magali.